தேசிய கொடியும் அசைந்து சொல்லும் கலாம் கலாம் சலாம் சலாம். தேசம் முழுக்க எழுந்து சொல்லும் கலாம் கலாம் சலாம் சலாம். கலாம் கலாம் சலாம் சலாம். கலாம் கலாம் சலாம் சலாம்.
Our movement should be like that. It should be the action happen. And the 108 comes. Then the gap. That's the gap only if the public comes.
That's the gap you're trying to address.
So that gap is a very precious gap. So the bleeding and the whole thing there. It takes 14 minutes, 20 minutes, 22 minutes. But actually, one of the point is you have to train the local volunteers. The difficult area, you have to target each place more prone to accidents.
நேர்மை என்பது நெஞ்சில் விளைந்தால் நிச்சயம் நற்குணம் உண்டாகும். நற்குணம் நிறைந்த உறவுகளாலே ஒற்றுமை என்பது உருவாகும். ஒற்றுமை மிகுந்த நாட்டில் தானே ஒழுக்கம் என்பது உருவாகும். ஒழுக்கம் காக்கும் நாடுகளாலே உலக அமைதி நிலையாகும். வள்ளுவர் போலே வாய்மை வகுத்த நல்லவர் நீங்கள் என்பதனாலே கலாம் கலாம் சலாம் சலாம். கலாம் கலாம் சலாம்
Welcome, good evening, namaste to every one of you to Alert Town Hall where life matters. We are back again after a very small pause, and just as we completed the 14th year in service yesterday, today is the first day as we step into the 15th year of service. And how better can we start off the first day than to spend the time with one of the persons whom we have always looked up to, both in terms of inspiration, leadership, and also in mentorship as well. Way back when we were found, when we went and met the former President of India, the legendary Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, and he asked us, we were simply raw passion, and he asked us, what are your next plans? What's your roadmap? What's ahead of you? And he was so curious to know that. And the raw passion that we were just laying out things in front of him. And the first person he wanted us to meet was Mr. Venkat Chengavali, who is the special guest today this evening. It's our absolute honor and pleasure to be having with us Mr. Venkat Chengavali. And I will start off with a formal introduction before as I bring Mr. Venkat on screen. Mr. Venkat Chengavali is a management consultant, leadership mentor, teacher and inspirational speaker, an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad and BTech from NIT Warangal. Mr. Venkat has more than 4 decades of experience, including 19 years as CEO in Indian and multinational corporations of pharmaceutical, chemical, FMCG allied and emergency healthcare industries. Mr. Venkat was the CEO of Emergency Management and Research Institute, EMRI, and under his leadership, 108 services had reached out to over 11 states in less than 6 years with 3,000 plus ambulances and had responded to over 12 million emergencies and saved over 350,000 lives. As an advisor to the government of Uttar Pradesh, he set up Dial 100 for the state police. He is currently also an advisor to the governments of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana state. So it is my absolute privilege and honor and pleasure. Each time I have to tell you, dear viewers, volunteers, friends who are tuning in, each time from the date Dr. Kalam wanted us to meet him, we have never walked out of the meeting without being awestruck, without being totally inspired, and with a will, with a vigor to do more. And today we are so honored to be having with us Mr. Venkat Changavali. Sir, welcome to Alert Town Hall. So wonderful to have you with us this evening.
Thank you so much, Rajesh. Thank you. Very good evening to all of you.
Mr. Venkat, I really cannot express in words the joy that I have upon seeing you, one. And number two, look forward to, I know this is going to be a power-packed session of learning for many of us, as each time it has been that way. Every time we have spent time with you, the amount of experience that you come with, both in terms of industry, in your corporate practice, and also in the social sector and the social space. So before I get on to a little more brass tacks about the social space, would love to know more about Mr. Venkat Changavali. From a small village with a frugal background to the, I remember Dr. Pratap Reddy, the chairman of Apollo Hospitals, when he introduced you as the father of emergency management system, 108 in India. So from a small village with that kind of a background to all the way to be the father of emergency management system in India, could you walk us through that journey of yours in your personal life?
Sure. It's a 67 years journey, Rajesh. Born in a very middle class, conservative family in a small village of 300 houses, a place called Adipudi in Andhra Pradesh near Chirala. I did my schooling under the tree, no blackboard, nothing of the kind, from 1st to 4th standard. And I skipped that 5th standard and entered direct 6th standard. So I went to Chirala, where my father was a school teacher in a municipal school. I did everything in Telugu medium. From 6th to 11th, so I was in Chirala. From there, I went to Andhra Laila College because, I didn't want to do in the same college where others have done. I thought something I should do different. So I went to Laila College. From there, I wanted to do chemical engineering and instead of only any engineering. So I didn't apply to any other engineering, only chemical engineering, because I knew at that time it was called BTech. Only chemical was called BTech. So I thought I used to get a degree of BTech. I applied only to REC Warangal and Andhra University Chemical. I didn't get in Andhra. I got in Warangal. From there to IIM Ahmedabad. And that's all. From 77, my first job, starting with a 1,000 rupee salary as a management trainee in Mumbai. From there to 9 years in finance, planning. Then I went to marketing. Then I became a CEO exactly after 15 years of my career. 77 I started, 92 I became a CEO. And I left Chennai, where I was CEO till 2005. I joined EMRI. And when I left EMRI in 2011, last 10 years I have been leadership mentor, teacher, trainer, as well as author, and of course advisor to various governments. The journey was basically multifunctional, multi-ownership companies, multi-cities, multi-industries. That served me, a well-rounded person than just only one industry from the beginning to the end, or one city or one ownership.
So nice, so wonderful to know that. I know it is impossible to encapsulate 60 plus years of this phenomenal journey in less than, probably, I probably didn't even give you a full 5 minutes on that. But in this entire journey that I also read about a few things, Mr. Venkat, and also from you as I visited you and throughout this entire journey, what one thing that has commonly stood out is you have consistently embraced challenges right from the quest for higher education. Coming from a small village, I remember reading somewhere about there you had even inhibitions about language proficiencies and all that, but you took it up as a challenge and shot for being part of one of the reputed institutions. And from there on, every single time you have been you take challenges by the horn. And what motivates you? What motivates you to do that every time?
I think the very first challenge I faced was when I moved from municipal school to Loyola College. The competition was higher, relevant competition was higher. Because all the school first come to Loyola College there. And then when I moved from Loyola to REC Warangal, the competition increased further. When I went to IMA, every time I felt I was inadequate.
Okay.
Compared to others. Instead of feeling bad, the reality is I was inadequate. But the work to be done is accept it, put in more efforts without any complacency. That's what the first challenge I faced was always higher relevant competition at every education institution I went to. But I came with flying colors in any of all these institutions because of the sheer hard work and embracing that that challenge without any fear. Number two is I focused only on positivity.
Okay.
That's so what? Let me put in efforts and get in. Next challenge I faced was communication skills because of Telugu medium. So how do I make a presentation? How do I speak? Because in engineering, also generally it is taught more in Telugu than in English. English, the chemistry, maths, physics, all that, whether English or Telugu, it doesn't matter. But whereas when I went to IMA and realized they called me for a remedial classes. So I used to read Hindu every day, close to an hour, and write down those words which are difficult where I didn't understand the meaning, go to a dictionary and start using that word later. That's how I started improving English. But the communication skills was still weak where I was to not presenting technical subjects, but to inspire people, to tell them to, look at their face and talk without fear. That was not coming. So one of my bosses, when he gave me feedback in 84, all are good with you, your analytical, conceptual, strategic, all that with 10 out of 10, but your communication skills are only 2 out of 10.
Okay.
I didn't really understand him that day, but later that night when I went home, my wife told me, when he gives you marks 10 out of 10 for other dimensions, when he gave you 2, that means he's truly concerned about your improvement.
Right.
So next day morning, I asked him, why you gave me 2? He said very clearly, if you want to be here at this level as a deputy manager, I will rate your communicates 10 out of 10. But you want to be a CEO in the next 8 years, this is not adequate. That night, I went and joined National Speakers Academy in Mumbai, near Kolaba.
Okay.
Started practicing how to hold a mic, how to speak, all that. But now, from that time to now, if I take almost 36 years, I've been practicing communication skills, looking at role models. I looked at Clinton, I looked at Obama, I looked at many role models who are fantastic in their communication. And I also practiced teaching. I started teaching from 84 itself in Sidnam College, then Bangalore, then Chennai, then Hyderabad. Teaching helped me to improve my communication. Okay. Instead of saying I am not good, I accepted as a reality, took the help of others, started practicing, took feedback and kept on improving. The next background is, next challenge I faced in my career was, it's when personal challenge, when I got TB, doctor told me first it's a cancer. He didn't imagine it was a TB. Okay. So fever and this and that, when the tests were not confirming TB, he thought it was cancer. But instead of sitting idle, I went I am indoor to address the students, and the director was very close to me. He said, "Arey, your face is looking as if you're going to die tomorrow." Okay. I said, "No, I'm all right. Because my final test has not come." So when the final test came, no cancer, it's only tuberculosis. But still 9 months taking the treatment, I didn't skip any of my schedules. So whenever a challenge comes, what Dr. Kalam told us, accept, captain it, defeated and succeeded. Unknowingly, I was doing that. Then, of course, Corona is another challenge what we face now. Never in my life, I sat at home for 6 months, 7 months, continuously breakfast, lunch, and dinner cooked by wife, sitting next to her and eating. It didn't happen. Now, I thought instead of assuming what to do, I accepted, changed my entire schedule. I started assuming I don't have time. 24 hours is not enough. I prepared my schedule around 14 to 15 hour schedule. I prepared on a reading side, a management book,
Okay.
chemistry, maths book, and also a book on, I started reading Mahabharata now after I completed Ramayana and the other spiritual books. Then yoga, walking, spending time with the family and watching movies in the bedroom. I don't have time actually compared to what I had pre-corona. Now, are you willing to accept that challenge and then face it boldly? But my rural background in all these challenges helped me in terms of, utilizing those strengths when I was brought up with limited resources. Instead of complaining about resources, I learned how to, produce more from the same resource. Sharing, openness, concern for others, empathy. These kind of strengths of rural background and middle class background helped me to face these challenges better.
So nice, so nice. In fact, I was going to ask you with these changed times, to the extent I know, even after you come out of a very active professional life, you travel a lot, and then this must have ensured that you are at home all the time. You do have a very inspirational room that I have loved to visit. It's surrounded by books and surrounded by books all the way from the your lecture notes from college that you maintain so impeccably until today. Mr. Venkat, as we speak, I'm very glad to welcome a lot of people watching us as we speak through this conversation. A warm welcome to Saju Shan. Very warm welcome to Mr. Mike Muralidharan, the chairman at Alert. Welcome to Kala Balasundaram, the founder. There's a note from her saying, absolute pleasure to have you on Alert's 14th anniversary town hall, sir. That's from Kala. Mr. Mike's dropped a note saying, blessed to have you as Alert's mentor. Krishnan Lakshman, Patabi, Pushparaj, Velayudam, Balaji Namadev Naidu, Balaji Guru, Mrs. Kalpana Muralidharan, Dr. Sriram Ramdas, Ms. Sangeeta Raja, Gokul Krishnan, Hari Prasad, Ms. Lata Dubey, Mr. Gokul Krishnan. I really quickly going through to warmly welcome you. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, all of you. Welcome, and I'm extremely proud and privileged to address Alert Town Hall on this particular important day of beginning of 15th year. It's my pleasure.
Thank you so very much. And Mr. Venkat, as we were actually, there were many topics to talk about when for an interaction with somebody like you, and walking through three important words: service, delivery, and leadership was something that we thought we will do some justice to the amount of inspiration that you can be to people. You have worn multiple hats as you were speaking, and in fact, you've been a CEO in a for-profit environment and also a CEO in an absolutely non-profit environment. So I wanted to first start off asking you a question basically on everybody today, whether they are in profit space or not for profit space. Everybody talks about the beneficiary and the customer, whichever area of profession they are into. So if I may ask you, if you were to define customer service in a not-for-profit environment, an organization, how different is it to a corporate definition of customer service, specifically in saving lives space that you have been very passionate about?
See, customer service is whether you are in profit or non-profit, it's defined as gaining rapport, empathy, and care. It's and also connecting to the customer. Customer service has to have these elements of empathy, connection, care, and rapport. But in non-profit, particularly in life-saving situations, you are providing emergency care to a victim, where this product cannot be inventory now. There's nothing like inventory of this. You have to produce it there and deliver it there on time.
Right.
That is number one difference. It is time dependent. You have to do it then in that 2 minutes or 1 minute what you have got, you have to do CPR or you don't do.
Right.
It's not like Amazon product coming and and after 1 hour also doesn't matter. No. So this defines the skills of people who have to deliver customer service in a life-saving non-profit situation. It is not inventory. It is completely his individual skill and his response, timely response, that determines the customer service here. To what extent he has assessed the customer, he respected the customer and delivered it. So, you see, in a customer service here, there are moments of truth, what they say in corporate sector, but here, moments of truth are extremely important. Like in EMRI, when the guy dials 108, when you lift the phone and say good morning, that is one moment of truth. Second moment of truth, when the communication officer takes the call, takes the information, that is second. Third is how seamlessly the call is transferred from CO to DO without knowledge of the, the caller. And next, the EMT, before starting the vehicle, getting in touch with the patient relatives saying, I started, that is the next moment of truth. Then the way he provides care at home before shifting to the ambulance, there is another moment of truth. Next one is what you do in ambulance, what kind of pre-hospital care you provide, what kind of driving you are doing by the pilot, and how you are handing him over at the hospital, and what kind of follow-up you are doing after 48 hours. These moments of truth the way you give him attention, the way you do CPR, all these are moments of truth, what he believes are extremely good, and he says this is the best service. Now, here, delighting a customer, what they say in corporate world is different from here. Delighting customer in a non-profit setting is, I have to treat every victim as the first customer I am treating.
Right.
I cannot imagine I already treated today 4 of them, 5 of them. This is the 5th one today. No. Every call in EMRI call center is a new call, first call. Same way, every victim I am attending is my first victim. The moment that thought comes to me, my energy levels come, my perspective changes, and my abilities come automatically because it's time dependent. The second one is there has to be a free conversation. It's a free conversation with empathy, with respect, with transparency. There has to be active listening. It's not required in corporate sector, it's active listening. He's saying pain here, but sometimes I tell people ignore what he's saying, go somewhere else because there could be hidden injury. Go to that. But you have to act as if you are listening and go to another part which he has not stated there's a pain, but there's a hidden injury there. The building that rapport, relationship, and trust is what is customer service in a non-profit sector. Because the functional value of CPR and the emotional value what you are providing with CPR, emotional value in terms of that rapport, that hassle-free transaction, that respect, that listening. Because of that, he feels that CPR is very good. This man has done a fantastic job. Even if he has done, the service itself looks better. The way the person gets connected to the victim.
Right. So beautifully put, Mr. Venkat. In fact, I think you flipped the term customer service into moments of truth that one needs to look for, especially
Yes.
in the not-for-profit sector, and specifically when you're in the life-saving space. One of the things that intrigues me in most of the projects that you have been a part of, for example, EMRI, right? Most of the NGOs and NPOs that are out there to do good in whatever format, in whatever chosen area of change that they want to bring about. All of them, after a point, want to scale their impact. That's one thing that is there as an internal goal to most of the NGOs. So I wanted to ask a question to you on quality versus quantity. All your projects, starting from EMRI to the recently completed UP 100, has been one of scale, right? And in fact, if I look at EMRI in 2005, what started off as a 15 ambulances fleet, by the time I think it was 2009, about 1,550 ambulances in a span of just about 4 years, right? So the scale has been something that you have always been, extremely successful in. So my question is, how does one scale the impact without compromising on quality? Now, most of the times when you try and scale, you might take a beating on quality, but how does one scale without compromising on quality? Is it a factor of investment most of the times?
No, not at all. I think I must tell you one thing clearly. I never believed there is something called pilot project, only 15 ambulances, I'll go to 10,000 later. So in 15, I can afford to make mistakes. No, what I learned in corporate sector, that visioning, that strategic thinking, that innovation, that 108 number. I didn't put 108 number when I reached a 700 ambulance. It was there from day one. The ambulance design, or the training, what kind of people you need. EMT means I defined in 2005 a person with empathy, with modesty and trustworthiness.
Oh, wow.
These three are extremely important qualities of an EMT.
Okay.
Same way I defined ambulance basic life support and advanced life support. Same way I defined ambulance whether you're running 15 or 15,000. Ambulance is not meant for patient care alone. It is much beyond. It is meant for patient relatives' comfort and public safety.
Okay.
You have to ensure that these three are ensured while saving the life of a patient. I can kill 100 people on the road, save one guy, I am not responsible. But this clarity was there right from beginning. The processes were there documented right from beginning. When a call comes, when the ambulance goes there, how he hands over, so processes, the technology, people, what training, the 2 months training, on what subjects, and what is the inside the class, in the ambulance, in the hospital, what phases are there. All these were defined, and I never used the word pilot. The moment I use the word pilot, people think they have a right to make mistakes. No, it is straight on.
Okay.
This is as good as running 10,000 ambulances. The entire infrastructure of the strategy to structure to, people to training to, all that were very clear from day one. That's why scaling up became easier. Same way in UP 100 also. So whether it was a 400-seater center, 700 call takers working in 3 shifts, it didn't matter at all because things were very clear. There I insisted on every victim of emergency in police, there are, more than, I think around 450, 500 emergency types. A robbery of 100 rupees and robbery of 10,000 crores. Will the police respond same way? No. Whom will you inform? 10,000 crores, you have to inform Chief Minister. But whether it's 100, but so far, till then,
Okay.
they were saying, no, up to them, usko pata hai. The guy who is police vehicle guy knows whom to inform. I said, sorry, I want to know in writing. A manual was written in Hindi and kept there in the vehicle, police vehicle. Also a soft copy on his mobile device sender. So that the quality doesn't suffer despite scaling up is only, it's like, see, a mother producing. My mother produced 8 children. I don't think quality suffered from first child to second child to third child or 8th child. She produced same way and she has brought us up same way with the same values, same ethics, same process, how we should eat, how we should respect elders. It's not like one child people will behave differently and 10 children will behave differently. This is all in our mind when the scale goes up. You have a right to make mistake. This is all in the mind actually, more than anything.
Okay.
Now I'm sure Mike knows whether in the college, whether there are 1,000 students or 10,000 students, curriculum, faculty, examination, that spirit and that discipline has to be same. It cannot be different.
Right.
Yeah.
So true, so nicely said. I wanted to, somebody like you who's operated at a scale, throw some light on that. In a continuation to that point, are there factors, specifically I'm talking about NGOs and NPOs, are there factors that could spoil delivery when an organization grows? For example, like we are just entering into our 15th year. But likewise, every organization when it grows, are there factors that we have to be careful about that could spoil delivery?
Yes. Sure, I think you have to be careful. This is, with my experience, I found first thing can go wrong in delivery because of wrong people.
Okay.
You have recruited wrong people. That's the first thing. Second one is, even after recruiting wrong people, you are not taken action to throw them out.
Okay.
Say he's my man, he's your man, all that kind of things. Number three is training and upgradation of their annual training. Next important thing came in my way is processes being not documented, not adhered, not upgraded. That is the next element which came in the way of delivery. Next is the technology support, which automated these processes. The next element came is decision making. I think delivery is a function of timely decisions made by the respective supervisors, managers. When you don't make those timely decisions, decision about people, decision about resources, all that. The next one I always said is change management.
Okay.
The other one is review. I always felt I never missed throughout my 20 plus years of CEO career, never ever skipped a monthly review of my people reporting to me. It starts at 9:30 in the morning. Ending time, nobody knows. It can be 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the night.
Okay.
But I change the sequence sometimes. I don't call the first fellow every time first fellow. Suddenly I call because other guy may be preparing in the room. I call that guy.
Okay.
And no phones allowed, no laptops allowed. You have to concentrate because you have to learn from others when I'm reviewing. And my comments are applicable to everybody. Because better delivery can happen only when you review and correct this. I made actually some alphabets of review. So how analytical is the review meeting, how basics have to be clear in a review meeting, all that kind of things. And then I use this, delivery is a function of motivation of people. How well they are motivated. If they are not motivated, what the hell your process people did? All that is not important if the motivation is low. You haven't paid him salary only. You haven't patted him when you go there. So my best opportunity, wherever I see an ambulance, I'll stop. Even today, by habit, after leaving EMR at 10 years, I still go and pat him. How are you? How is your family? What is happening? I think these are all broadly the delivery, success factors or failure factors. Start on communication. How do you communicate with the delivery people? They are in the field. They are extremely emotional guys. Are you communicating to them in an emotional way, in a simple way, in a repetitive way? If you use the complex word in this complex, competitive, globalized environment where all that will not work. Arey guys, competition has increased. Let us work hard. I will reward you. Are you talking to them in a simple way? When you talk complex way, also people get demotivated. But people don't know there are so many factors behind making delivery successful. I'm glad you asked a very, very important question. See, if you recall, Professor Ramcharan wrote a book on execution. And he mentioned 500 top CEOs lost their jobs because of poor execution. They were extremely intelligent, strategists, all that. But they could not produce, they could not deliver results on the road. Because when the rubber touches the road, what happens? That is the delivery.
Right, right. So many things to take away from. Specifically, the reason wanted to touch upon delivery is also, finally execution is what matters. As we have our tagline that compassion with awareness is a good intention, but the compassion with awareness leads to action. So finally, it needs to end up in action, and delivery is all about that. Mr. Venkat,
But I must tell you, Rajesh, we conducted deliveries and we delivered kits inside the ambulance
wow, wow.
very successfully. Even twins, many times they were named after people who delivered.
Lovely.
Luckily, nobody was named after Venkat, otherwise, my wife would have suspected.
Lovely, lovely. Mr. Venkat, I'm moving on to another very important aspect, leadership. And you've been a CEO of large for-profit organizations. I actually live very close to Simrise, a stone's throw away from Simrise, and where every time I go down for a walk that way and see the board, see the campus, makes me recall that once upon a time, Mr. Venkat should have been, calling the shots here. And then from there, you've also been a CEO of a very large non-profit organization in EMRI. So from a leadership perspective, now how is NPO, not-for-profit leadership, is it any different from corporate leadership?
See, one thing, basic ground rules like a leader has to learn, he has to energize, he has to adapt to situation, he has to do things, he has to empathize, he has to be responsible to his people, all the stakeholders. I think this is LEADER.
Okay.
This is common wherever you are. But it is not charisma, it is not PR, it is not showmanship. It is performance, consistent behavior. It is the same skills whether you are in profit or non-profit. You have to be a visionary, you have to be a strategizer, you have to be an innovator, you have to be a team builder, you have to be a good executioner, you have to collaborate with people, you have to motivate. All these leadership skills are required, but there are here. But here, my experience when I was a corporate CEO, these skills are used much more in non-profit, because if I don't use them, there may be an instance of losing a life.
Right.
Then why the hell I have left my corporate sector and came here? You got an opportunity to do something for people. Better do it well. The well means those skills have to be used properly and more intensively. But in a non-profit sector like emergency, life-saving situation, you are responding to needs of others with kindness and compassion.
Right.
You can sell me a refrigerator, we can sell me a computer without, all you IT guys can do without compassion and without kindness. But I can't do here. I have to serve the needs with compassion and kindness. See, I'll tell you a story. There was an old man sitting this side of the river, and he was expecting a lift to the other side. People were coming, and one after another, nobody stopped. 4 or 5 guys, he didn't stop them, nor they stopped. Finally, 5th guy stopped.
Okay.
And the old man looked at his eyes, and he asked him, "Can you give me a lift?" He said yes. He gave him a lift and went to the other side. Now that guy asked the one who gave lift, "My dear old man, why did you stop me instead of stopping the first 4 guys?" "My friend, in your eyes, I could see that compassion. I could not see in other guys.
Okay.
I know that you will help me.
Okay.
You have that need to help me, that compassion I could see in your eyes." I think that is what people see that. When you recruit people, please look at their eyes. That is the eye-to-eye contact I used much more.
Okay.
Of course, in the college I used, but I used in a non-profit setting much more, because you look at the victim, he gets much more relieved when you look at him compassionately. The other one is, see, I'm contributing to enlarging well-being of others who are not related to me, who are not connected to me. Now, the ability to contribute to the well-being of others as a leader, I got an opportunity. Very few get that opportunity.
Right.
They start corporate sector, they die in the corporate sector. But I got an opportunity to shift from corporate to here to improve the, to enlarge the well-being of others whom I do not know. Why not I do the best out of it? Is what my leadership inside tells me every day. You friend, read more and practice more of leadership. So the principles I followed in a non-profit sector, one is it is not image building. My image was there. It was there, it is there, it will be there. But I'm not doing this work of sending an ambulance in time. I'm here to save life, not to build my image. I'm not doing because I have some guilt feelings to sort out. I'm not doing here for some PR exercise. I'm not doing it for a photo opportunity. I'm not doing it for some tax saving. I am doing it because I'm committed to enlarge the well-being of the person when he is in need. I have to save his life. That is my first principle. Second principle is humility. I can't serve anybody unless I am humble. I have to accept I am smaller, the victim is bigger. The recipient of service is bigger than me. Then only compassion comes, then only my ability increases to serve him. I need not be that humble in my regular other sector. Third one is, it has to be still professional. I can't say just because, oh, no, it's only non-profit, what is there? No, it has to be much more professional so that I don't make mistakes. And it is proactive. Nobody came and asked me start 108. No citizen has come. No citizen has come start UP 100. No, it has to be proactive. It has to be professional. And the non-profit competence is much more important, my friend, than the profit sector. If you don't do well there, some competitor will come and take away. Here you said, I have started as alert, I want to provide you. You better do it. Have competent people improve the competence. Many people think non-profit, unfortunately, Rajesh, this is a very nascent industry, defined in a very wrong way.
Right.
Non-profit is whenever you have time, something you do. You want to help somebody, do. Some help is better than nothing. No, it has to be total help. And it is not a favor. You are giving back actually.
Right, right.
And somebody who is useless, one HR fellow who is about to retire after 5 years, he is not a fellow. Management will make him head of CSR. No, I have to make most competent senior man as head of CSR. Not somebody who is useless to me in corporate. If he is useless there, he will be doubly useless to me here. I will not take. Then of course, there is a joy of giving. In non-profit sector, I realized joy of giving. My dopamines have gone up. My satisfaction has gone up. My oxytocins have gone up. My attachment has improved. And then my frontal cortex activity has improved so much that I adhered more to the morals and values and ethics. There is, at the end of today, if I die, I can say clean slate, because there is a satisfaction of serving others beyond self. I could not say that 15 years back. 15 years back, it was only self, my organization, my customers, my shareholders. And today, beyond myself, satisfied so many people, served so many people whom I do not know, that no other job can give other than this non-profit leadership. That's all. Thank you, Rajesh.
So powerfully said. No, like always, I am lost in what I hear each time I speak to you. So powerfully said, Mr. Venkat. I'm going to want you to throw a little light on. I think you've been through the thick of one of the aspects of leadership is to how to handle crisis very well, and it happens even in not non-profit environments as well. And I think going back, one of the powerful case studies that is being used in business houses and including the Harvard is the crisis that hit EMRI. And you were in the driver's seat when the crisis hit EMRI. So can you sort of talk us through that phase and, looking back, what were the things that you did right to steer, such an important thing like 108 that was already serving people big time, see itself through the crisis and then actually afterwards even end up doing more in the most right manner?
See, first of all, I never imagined I'll ever face such a crisis, because chairman of Satyam Ramalinga Razu, from the time I met him on 21st Jan 2005 in Chennai, till he confessed on 7th Jan 2009, my impression of him is a God, very innovative person, wants to help others, and very simple man. This is my impression of him from the time I met him on 21st Jan 2005 till he went to jail on 7th Jan. When he rang me up in the morning at 10 o'clock on 7th Jan, I was in a review meeting and I was conducting a learning session on, actually downturn. How do you manage downturn? Coincidentally, I was teaching on downturn that day to my senior team, and his call comes.
Okay.
And he said, I am making a confession, and because of which EMRI will be impacted. I would request you to stay, don't leave. But I am resigning, my brother is resigning.
Okay.
I couldn't believe. I thought it was something wrong, and I never gave. I went back to my lecture, continued for another 1.5, 2 hours. By 12 or so, the news started coming. So I became quite emotional. I couldn't believe. And then I got composed. 3 o'clock, I addressed all the employees and told one thing. Sun is there for 12 hours. Moon is there for 12 hours. But we are there 24 hours. So Ramalinga Razu was sun. He has disappeared. One moon will come. But cause is there of saving lives. We are here to save lives. Let us stay on. Let us do our work. And that's all. From that day, entire 145 days, none of my 165 people who worked with me without getting a 1 rupee salary in that 145 days did not quit me at all. That night, Kalam rang up. He said, I want you to stay. Let us not discuss about Razu. Let us discuss about EMRI. What you will do tomorrow, tell me. And he said, quitters are not winners. And that's all. I said, no, I will not go. Then, of course, I sat down, wrote down. It took me another 3 days I locked myself from 3 o'clock till night, 11:30. I logged in a room, read all the newspapers, completely what I did in the last 4 years. Then I came to the conclusion, let me act. First, I said same, embrace this discomfort is the first one. How will I do? Number one, I resolved to stand up and fight to save lives. If I don't do it, I am more sinner than what Razu's confession was. I thought to myself like that. Number two, I said what actions are required to support the positive image of MRI was very, very good. How do I support the positive image? Media briefing, regularly speaking to media, sharing with them what's happening, asking them to come to the campus. Improved operations, added more ambulances, and then talking to governments, getting their funds. That is the second part. Third part was team building, team motivation, briefing them earlier only once in a month, now every week. Weekly, twice every week, briefing them what's happening. I shouldn't give a feeling that I'm running away. I'm all right. I ensured that my health was all right, not a single day a cold cough also. The other one is most important thing is lecturing continued, reviews continued, long-term thing continued. I brought Professor Ranjan Das during that crisis to come and teach us on strategic thinking. And I was addressing public visibility. So I went to Delhi, I went to Chennai, I went to people who called me during that time. I went and addressed as usual, as if there's a crisis.
Okay.
Fourth aspect was, it's very important that there is a lot of learning. I must learn more. In terms of first, I have to trust myself, because CEO is much more important than organization. I realized those 145 days, Venkat as CEO is more important than EMRI. If I am not there, organization collapses. It's all revolving. So let me present myself better, behave better, talk better, trust better, all that. Relationship building with governments, with media, with the inside customers, inside employees. Then reflecting every day, what I did something wrong today. It's not reflection once a month, reflecting every day.
Every day.
Reading. Then more exercises to see that my blood sugars, all that are normal. Fifth thing I did was stick to your values. I stuck to my values. That honesty, that humility, that ethics, that whatever I believed in, that being respectable to people, being humble, I'll stick to them, doesn't matter. I think in a crisis, you have to be very clear that only best leaders emerge out of crisis. So I thought, why not? I got an opportunity to be the best. I didn't create this opportunity, but I got this. So why not I do something to become the best leader? That's why, as you said, it got documented in various business schools.
Right. So inspiring, so inspiring. As I speak, I also see that there's a comment from one of our viewers, Ms. Lata Dubey. Oh my God, he is so inspiring, loving this. That's the comment from Ms. Lata Dubey. Very, very inspiring.
Thank you, Lata.
Very inspiring to hear this, Mr. Venkat. You briefly touched already about the importance of values and how you stuck to values, even through the complete, one of the, people will always recall this crisis as one of the most in the corporate history. It was a big crisis, and then it could have had a massive impact on a social a project like EMRI. And I on behalf of the people, on behalf of the viewers today, I honestly take this opportunity to thank you for for seeing that through so efficiently that today 108 continues to serve in this space. I am actually reading out from a case study a specific sentence, because EMRI, when 108 started, it was in Andhra Pradesh, but then it expanded its wings and went on to do offer this service to many states. And in fact, I think in one state, probably the ruling party was the opposition party in another state. So there were a lot of dynamics that would have played around, and it could have been actually easy to be tainted. And I'm just reading out from this case study that says the political dynamics in Andhra Pradesh was a case in point. EMRA was initially conceptualized under the leadership of Chief Minister Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, but the MOU was signed under the different state government headed by Chief Minister Mr. YSR Reddy. However, this did not have any significant impact on EMRI's startup plans, as the success of the phase enabled buy-in. Likewise, you went on to Gujarat and many other states. So just how we emphasized on values. Is there anything more you would want to lay your emphasis on leadership and values at the core of it, that will see us through, see any NPO, any non-governmental organization through?
Yeah, I think it's very important that you can only do a non-profit work in a small way with your own funds or with borrowed funds. You have to impact a large population of the entire state. You cannot do without the help of government. Now, government cannot be like what you expect. Their values are different. Their expectation is different. Their outlook is different.
Right.
Their outlook is next 5 years. And after 5 years, again, how do I come back? But your outlook is not like that. Your outlook is entire my life. How will I serve in that state? Whoever is the chief minister, whichever is the political party.
Right.
That's why whenever I meet a doubtful politician, when I shake hands, I'll come home and wash my hands with Dettol. So that I'm talking much before Corona.
Much before Corona, I was going to say that.
Yeah. that infection doesn't come to me.
Okay.
But he is in a position where he can be useful to me for my cause.
Right.
So I don't mind collaborating. It's as much as a thief going and putting money in Tirupati Hundi. TTD uses that money. It doesn't say that thief has given. So for me, I am not here in my life to evaluate he is a good politician, bad politician. It's after all not mine. Public votes for him. Whom am I? He is elected representative. Let me shake my hands and work with him within those constraints. How do I make sure that he supports me? He believes in me. Now, there is a pain. To work with the government, there is a pain. There is also pleasure.
Okay.
And there is a partnership. Now, you should know how to handle this pain. You should know what is a real pleasure, and you should know how to increase this pleasure to the people who receive this benefit.
Okay.
And the partnership has to exist if you have to deliver this service on a sustainable basis, but not at the cost of values. So my values throughout my life, not because of MRI, pre-MRI or post-MRI, my last 6-7 years, what I picked up from my parents or teachers or bosses. So the first one, integrity, that honesty, that humility, that congruence, that courage. These 4 components of integrity I demonstrated every time, everywhere. Second value I demonstrated very clearly was character. Whether you see me night time, daytime, anytime, I don't mind telling you what I did. That's all. Third is the truth. Truth has no opinion. I only talk to you truth and tell you the truth. Many times, I didn't mince my words. When my boss asked me one day, 28th May 92, he asked me, I understand you don't have any respect for me. I said, I'll be dishonest if I say no. I did not know really how much English I could speak at that time, like this. And hard work. Non-profit sector demands more hard work, I must tell you. Always 11:30, 12 o'clock is very, very common for me. Whereas now profit sector, 7 o'clock, Saturday, Sunday is usually off. But here, there is no Saturday, Sunday, it is 24/7 and it is almost 16 to 18 hours work. And that attitude of helping others. Right. That is a value what I had. And the positivity, because you don't have resources. Your partners, some of them are negative, but still you must protect your positive attitude. You must still trust people. You should keep on learning. Just because you're non-profit, that doesn't mean you should not learn. Keep on reading, keep on learning. I completed just one book on rethinking future. Now I'm reading something on why teams don't work. I completed Charles Sandy book on raincoat. There's no stop to that. Your value is to learn, upgrade yourself. The other value is very important thing, whether I was in profit sector or non-profit sector, my frugal living helped me. The frugal living with particularly in a non-profit sector, there were days where I went in third class. There were days where I went without reservation. Days where I always pack my lunch and dinner for my travel. Okay. I don't take company's money. Because if that money is there, it can be useful to save another life. Right. Why should I use it? And simplicity. I think the most important value is being simple, approachable. People can approach you if you talk simple, if you appear simple, if you speak simple, people like you. And, the most important thing is transparency. In a non-profit setting, the values of transparency is very important. So these are, as I said, I was operating in those 6 years, a DMK government like Mr. Karunanidhi, like, Congress government YSR, or BJP Mr. Modi. Like this, I was the only one operating in many states not belonging to one party. But one party was not in so many states as I was there.
Lovely. So yeah. Nice. So a lot of takeaways there yet again, Mr. Venkat. And one of the other things I think that's so important, while talking through leadership is this ability to adapt to change. Specifically in the current times, as we live through pandemic, everybody is talking about embracing newer ways of doing things. In fact, I'd alert what we had thought we will do this entire year, we had to completely rethink, rewire and rethink. Right, so social organizations sometimes can get, social initiatives sometimes can get sort of mired in sort of not able to think when it is found with a certain purpose. When they travel, it could happen that the environment has changed around, right? So the adaptability to change. Your thoughts on that? How important is that need and the adaptability to change?
Yeah, one thing is very clear that the customer aspirations are changing, employee aspirations are changing, technology is changing, society is changing, governments are also changing. Now, you can't say, I will not, this is given. There is nothing like I will not change. It's not possible. Otherwise, go out of business. Don't be there. But are you changing your core? What should not be changed is the core. Core values, while preserving them, changing those to serve better. If there is a need in a change in a process or a technology or a people skill, I'll of course adapt to that because it's helping me to serve the customer better. But if it is diluting my integrity, my character, one chief minister in one state, I will not name, and she said, so much bribe I want. I said, sorry, I will not give. So do you have the courage to walk out or not? No, politicians expect money, better give. No, sorry. I think you have to be very clear what cannot be changed. What can be changed. You have to be clear in your mind. Core values have to be preserved across generations. But other things, strategy has to change, skill has to change, process has to change to suit the expectations of whom I am serving. Absolutely no problem. That's what I did from a rural to urban. When I went, I have to adapt. When I went from a non-profit to profit to non-profit, I have to change. You get some time, but if you say I cannot change, if you have read that book, Who Moved My Cheese, it's exactly around that.
Right.
You have to anticipate change, you have to monitor the change, you have to adapt to the change, and you have to enjoy the change. You can't do it. It's like, see, in a simple family life, you enjoyed bachelor life, now you got married suddenly. You have to change or not?
Right.
Now, how do you balance between mother, wife, and you? Then suddenly one kid comes. How do you balance between all of them? Suddenly your job demands something. How do you balance? You're balancing self and your profession and the family. You're adapting every time to change in demands from outside. No? I think there is no way at all. Better we learn, but you should know what is that I should not change. You have to be very clear. And see, in EMR itself, 2005 when I joined, it was completely RASU funded. But RASU funded, I launched 70 ambulances the way I wanted. I kept there. From 2007 onwards, when government started funding as a PPP, I must listen to that secretary. I must deploy ambulances what he wants. They must cut. I used to sit in the center and inaugurate. Wherever in the PPP, actually he will sit. One useless politician will sit and you have to stand. But you can't help it. You have gone there. You wanted to serve entire state. So better adapt to that. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
Beautiful thoughts, Mr. Venkat. As we are sort of closing in on a little over 60 minutes, you've had a very wonderful relationship with the former president, the most dearest, legendary Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, both from a personal level and also professional. He's been the chairman emeritus when you were the CEO, and many things that you would have seen, observed, learned from a man like Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. So can you share with us some of the experiences that you have directly had with him, and also some of the things that you saw him and learned, heard him and learned, and so on and so forth?
I had known him for almost 10 years. From 2004, I met him first in Chennai. Then in 2005, I went to Rashtrapati Bhavan and made a presentation to him. when I made a presentation, I learned asking questions is important, answering to questions is important. Instead of you presenting in a monologue way.
Uh-huh.
He's a fantastic teacher. The way he prepares, he's a teaching CEO, very, very clearly what corporate sector keeps talking. He has been a teaching, and he was a teaching president. And he prepares, he pays attention to his students, he listens to them, he respects the students. I learned that teaching thing very clearly for me. Number two, I learned is that ethical leadership. We all have seen very clearly when he left what he was having. Very, very clear. Number three, I learned humility. When he came to my house, when I removed my shoe, he removed his shoe. When I asked him to sit at the head table and the dining table, he said, no, I'll sit in the center. Between your two children, two sons, I want to learn from them.
Oh.
They are the next generation. Let me learn from them. That humility is something, I haven't seen anybody at that level who reached and still so humble and nice. He autographed he has brought 3 books relevant to 3 of our couples. Me, my elder son, and my younger son. Brought the books relevant to us and signed and gave to us. That kind of humility I have not seen. Night it was already, he came at 8 o'clock, 10:45, 11. Governor was calling, Mr. Narasimhan was calling, please come fast. Then when we came out, his kids, 200 kids were there outside my house. He talked to them, he shook hands, all that. I don't know how he would have managed this corona days not shaking hands. I'm glad that, he didn't face this. And, particularly he taught me how to be grateful. How to be grateful to your teachers. When he quotes about Satish Dhawan, when he quotes about school teacher, when he quotes about many teachers at a small age to higher level, he always taught me, be grateful to people who taught you, who made you what you are. And he's a very futuristic man. When I visited him, 2010, Happy New Year, he said, no, man of your stature should say Happy New Decade.
Wow.
You should think 10 years from today. Don't say Happy New Year. That is more for small level managers. A leader should think long term. So wish Happy New Decade. And it forced me to prepare something, what EMR I should be 10 years from today, 15 years from today. What emergency man should be. Like that I was, he made me. And, overall, whatever you read in the books of leadership, I got opportunity to meet him those 50, 60 times. And finally, he never, assumed that appearance is not important. Before getting out of the car to address somebody, he'll take a small comb and his mirror and he will comb to ensure that his hairstyle is exactly the same. Including that.
So nice.
And no negatives, no negative about people. Right. No negative you ever talk.
So beautiful. Now, we're really thankful to you for helping us recall some of these personal moments that you have had with Dr. Kalam, and a total agreement about his humility. And in fact, I'm so glad that, the very first meeting that we had with him, he said, you have to meet. Have you heard of Venkat Chengavale? I said, no, sir. And he said, you have to meet him. And that's how this redirection happened. Thank you so much, Mr. Venkat, for sharing some of these personal experiences as well, along with Dr. Kalam.
Thank you.
You spoke about futuristic, and I want to, slightly shift our focus to a little bit into the future. This is also for our viewers and many of the volunteers, youngsters who are watching us. And it is true that a lot of volunteers and youngsters getting into the social space. They are, as far as Chennai is concerned, people saw that during the Chennai floods, and even now when the COVID period is going on, Corona period is going on, a lot of them out there, doing their little bit and things like that. In fact, the question that I was arriving at, there is also a note from Ms. Kala who was asked, dear Venkat sir, any time you walk into a meeting or an interview, I have always seen you come prepared with a bunch of papers. What's impressed and inspired me every time is your meticulous and organized approach to your thoughts, discussions, and file keeping. How has this disciplined and principled approach helped you in your success? Would love to hear it from you. So exactly on that note, my question to you is, many of the youngsters want to get into the social space. What according to you are those important things, traits, habits that one needs to possess, if not innately, needs to develop to sort of make this journey very fulfilling for themselves and be effective in doing what they are doing, like what Kala has quoted. Every time we would have probably met you after 6 months, but when you walk into a meeting with us, you will walk in with the notes you had with us 6 months back, and your conversation will be a continuation from there onwards. So that meticulousness, likewise, what are all the other things that youngsters today need to keep in mind apart from just the passion they want to do something for the society?
Just to take on Kala's question, I think it's a question of value, valuing others' time. When you prepare well, you take lesser time. If you don't prepare well, you take more time and you are wasting their time and blabbering, all that happens. And I always assume today I'm talking to Alert. I assume I'm talking to first time to Alert, and I'm giving a public speech for the first time. That's my, because I cannot afford to lower my brand name. I cannot afford to lower Alert's brand name because of my low preparation and not in a mood to speak. I will not allow that to happen. See, this is a paper what I prepared for today.
Wow.
This is a paper what I prepared. This is a paper what I prepared.
Wow.
This is a third draft.
Third draft for today.
Is it connected to our money? No, it's pure respect. You called me, I can't take it. Doesn't matter. So many times I spoke on the subject. I can talk. No, I cannot. That's a question of values. So number 2, on volunteers, I think we have to be very clear. These young volunteers have to be, other than their passion, are they empathetic? Are they humble? What I talk to you? Do they trust the patient? Do they have those qualities? Do they have the positivity in them? If they see, 100 ml blood, say, oh, 100 ml, you will die. Yesterday 50 ml died, today you will die. Or he is saying, no, 1 liter fellow yesterday he is alive. Nothing will happen to you. Is he positive? And resources always will be constrained in a non-profit setting.
Right.
You will never have adequate resources. Always you will short of resources. Now, what that you will do innovatively in a constrained resource environment, you have to innovate to overcome. I think when resources are constrained,
Right.
my mother was cooking for 8 people with my father's salary of 500. She was much more innovative than somebody with 2 lakh salary.
Right.
I think resource constraint he has to respect and appreciate and innovate. The other one most important thing is, am I selfless? Am I selfless? One is salary, whatever is needed, that is over. After that, are you selfish? Still, what is there for me? I say, no. And lastly, patient comes first. I think that attitude of patient comes first. 2 examples I want to give you. Night at 12:30, I was traveling 3 hours away from Hyderabad. I saw an ambulance crossing the bridge below and going that side. I took a turn and I overtaken that ambulance and stopped parallel to that ambulance. The driver opened his window and he saw me. He said, sorry, sir, there is a patient inside. We have to take her urgently.
Okay.
And he went away. I'm a CEO, yeah. I'm a CEO, the bugger, I employed him, and the fellow had audacity to tell that patient is important. Of course. Then I left a message to the call center. When I returned back, it was almost 12:45. I returned in the night. I left, told call center, so ambulance driver, please ask him to talk to me. And they empty both.
Okay.
When they called me at 3:30, they called me, they were apologizing. I said, no, I'm actually proud of you guys. If you had courage and guts to tell a CEO, shut up and go, I cannot wait for you. My job is done.
Beautiful.
Your practice that patient comes first. I think it's, this is this shows that.
Correct.
And I can't say, every CEO has this quality, but I need the guy who's delivering service has to have this quality. And, see, the number of cases are there where that, a wife delivered,
Uh-huh.
it's called call delivery, COUL. It's called call delivery.
Okay.
Very, very rare deliveries
Uh-huh.
where the, kid comes with the bag. So she delivered at home. They put that sack inside a bucket in the bathroom, assuming the kid was dead.
Okay.
Husband rang up. Then our ambulance went and the paramedic went inside and took care of the mother and asked where is the newborn baby. He said that again, show me. When he went to the bathroom in the bucket that was there, then he punctured that sack and he saved that kid. Do you think I would have done that? No, that guy has to do there.
Right.
That is the delivery we're talking.
Right.
Have you instilled that kind of value system? Have you seen that in a guy? And have you encouraged him? So I called him next day morning to recognize him. That's what a leader has to do, at least recognize. Encourage such people. So this is what I look at the youngsters.
Beautiful, sir. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful. So much to consume and take away from. I have one or two last questions again, futuristically looking. And before 2005, there was no number to call. People can say there was a 101, 102, 103 and all that. But then came that one centralized number. That was 2005. So you can say before 2005 and after 2005. And 15 years have passed since then, and there is a system. And like how you said, Dr. Kalam telling you that, where leaders will have to think of at least minimum a decade, if not, definitely not confine themselves to 1 year. So my question is, in the emergency care response life-saving space, where should India be? Where should our society be? 10 years from now, 15 years from now, from 2020, from now, where should we be? And then as a corollary to that, I also want to ask you, sir, as an NGO that is dedicated to this space of saving lives, what role an NGO like Alert should play more effectively towards that vision?
Good. Thank you. Are people willing to listen? Another 3-4 minutes?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I read a comment here from Mr. Lakshmanan Sathapan. I didn't realize a NGO being run as professional setup. Very inspiring. I'm just reading a comment from one Mr. Lakshmanan.
Yeah. I think very clearly that when I started EMR itself, I had the vision. But unfortunately, after 5 years, it got diluted a little bit. Still, my vision 15 years from today, the emergency care will be in India. Number one, pre-hospital care, what we are providing at the site or in the ambulance, pre-arrival of ambulance or after arriving in the ambulance, the care before reaching hospital, that quality will improve substantially because there will be investments in recruiting right people, in training them, and also documenting processes and adapting to the new technologies to help them provide the care better. This is the first change I'm going to see very clearly 15 years from today. Second change I'm going to see is that there will be very smooth integration backward and forward for the ambulance. Backward in terms of what Alert does, what 108 does, what the hospital does. There will be a very smooth integration between three of them. More collaboration, formal collaborations will be there. Formal cooperativeness will be there. Formal skill building will be there. Formal dependencies will be defined. Where you stop, where I start, that kind of things. Third one is the National Digital Health Mission. What envisages every citizen having a digital health record will definitely ensure that this integration happens. So when you meet a patient before ambulance comes and inside the ambulance at the hospital, the database is exactly same once you have his, identity number, it remains exactly same, and it's very, very easy.
Right.
The other one is what Dr. Kalam's vision of one volunteer in every family.
Family.
It may not happen in 15 years, but what will happen definitely is there'll be one volunteer at least in 100 households. Every 1,000 population, there should be one volunteer. Like where I'm staying here, 5,000 people in this colony, there should be at least 5 volunteers. Non-doctors I'm talking. Non-doctors, responsible citizens becoming volunteers. At least one we should have a trained guy on basic life support, who has passion to do, who is selfless and all that what I talked about. I also imagine in 15 years, the schools will teach as part of curriculum to the 7th standard or 8th standard students on patient stabilization. What the guy can do. They will talk about, in terms of before the ambulance comes, what he should do, when he should dial 108, and and also they will be trained like NCC and all that what has happened. Kids also should be trained on because I believe a kid at the age of 12, 13 can learn better without any biases. If you do it in college days, nobody will listen to you.
Right.
At the age of 8 means he may be 13, 14 years, the guy will be much better too. I feel government should, instead of saying smart city bullshit. Smart city without emergency response system, what is smart city? I don't understand. All you IT guys have made it smart city means technology. Smart city is life saving. Every smart city provider should have a collaboration with the life saving people to make that city smart, to save a life. Which I didn't see, frankly, in the last so many years in these smart city participants of various technology guys. Alert will play a role actively in any of them, whether it is building capabilities, defining processes, or in terms of appropriate technologies, or making sure that the curriculum includes this part of emergency management stabilization, or the National Digital Health Mission, how we take that data and given to people across the value chain, not restricting yourself only to, one volunteer for every 100 households.
Okay.
You will play a bigger role. I would even imagine you will be running 108 in at least 10 states. Because governments are looking for passionate non-profit leadership. We don't have today. 108 is run by all the guys who come through tender, profit-making orientation, pay less salaries, dilute processes, do something, cook your books, show more emergency records. No, we are talking someone. This requires, that passionate, high integrity, high value-led leadership, which I feel Alert can make a beginning, at least start from Tamil Nadu, and then go to states. Country needs people of that leadership to run 108. I'm sure you will play that role in the 15 years. Start with the first state in the next 1 year, Tamil Nadu.
Oh, thank you.
Because
sir.
they're saying we are not happy with these current people.
Okay.
We are not happy. We want to change. Please tell us who can do it. According to me, you don't require experience of running ambulances to run ambulances. I never ran. You can't say that to get married, you should have got married before. No, it's like that. You can learn, provided you have the passion. I went to fragrance flavor industry. I never learned. I never had experience. I became a product manager of epilepsy and depression diseases. I learned emergency medicine. I spoke in Stanford School as an engineer. First engineer, non-doctor speaking on emergency medicine in Stanford School. Please remove from your mind, you don't have background. You have background. That background is passion, values, and compassion. That all is needed. Buckle up and play a much bigger role. Thank you.
So thank you so much, sir. This is very, very awe-inspiring. In fact, I think we definitely want to play a much larger role. I'm very confident that, and we want to commit ourselves to that, and do our bit to ensure that some of the things that you said is really seeing the light of the day, and we have a role to play in that, and we would love to really play these larger roles which are out there. And of course, I know for sure that we can turn to you for guidance and for learning and things like that. As always, Mr. Venkat, I never walk out of a meeting with you without feeling totally energized. Today as well has not been an exception, and I'm very sure that all our viewers, as I see the comments flowing in, you've left a lot of positivity, a lot of thought to think about. As we go to bed over the weekend, I think slowly they have to seep in, and internalized people will, all of us will need to internalize that. And I read one comment from Mr. Vikram Johnny Prakash, excellent and truly inspiring words. So many such words coming in, and Mr. Venkat, very, very grateful to your thoughts, mentorship for all these years, and we continue to look forward to looking up to you for direction in and also looking at Alert playing a much larger role in saving more and more and more on lives that we cannot afford to lose in this country because of lack of help. So I take this opportunity on behalf of all the viewers, volunteers, at the board of Alert, all the trustees, to thank you for sparing time this evening and talking to all of us and gracing this Alert Town Hall this evening.
My best wishes to you, and once again for the 15th year starting celebrations and many more years like this. Whether I am there or not, you should continue to celebrate. Alert celebrates.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
So very
All
much.
the best. All the best. Bye-bye.
Dear friends, viewers, I'm very sure that the last about 80 to 90 minutes would have gone past picking up so many lessons, and this is how it has exactly been every time we have met Mr. Venkat. I'm so glad that we could have him as a guest this evening. A lot to think about, not just in the life-saving space, but he has left us with a lot of thoughts to think about. Anybody interested, anybody looking forward to get into the social space, the kind of values that are required, the kind of leadership skills that are required, the kind of little focuses that are required, and so on and so forth. It's been a phenomenal journey for us, listening to Mr. Venkat, and today in this small encapsulated session through the Alert Town Hall, we hope that we have also reached that out to many more of our viewers and our supporters, patrons, volunteers, especially to all of you, because you've committed yourselves to saving lives, and we recommit ourselves today as we enter into the 15th year. So with that, I'm going to sign off for this evening until I see you into the next town hall where life matters. Have a wonderful evening. I look forward to journeying along in the 15th year and for the next decade, as Dr. Kalam told, that every leader needs to think. So have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so very much. Good night to all of you.